Well, good morning, everyone. We can get started. Just want to make sure that you can hear me okay. Okay, people on Zoom, can you hear me okay? All right, great. Great. Just to begin, I'll introduce myself. My name's Wynn Fricke. I'm one of the co-founders of Common Ground, and I'm very happy to be here in the place of Mark Nunberg. He is offering a retreat at Cloud Mountain over the week, so I'll be stepping in for him today. Welcome everyone to Sunday morning. Is there anyone here for the first time today? Okay, great. Well, welcome to you especially. Tim, are you here? Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, it doesn't quite feel like it's on. Right. We have the children here today, so lots to look forward to. Let's begin with the chant that's on page 30. So this is called the suffusion with the divine abidings, and the idea is that we settle into this natural quality of kindness in the heart, and we radiate it in all directions, to the front, to the side, behind, and to the back. So connecting with these various qualities of kindness in the heart. Now let us make the four boundless qualities shine forth. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with compassion. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with gladness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with gladness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with equanimity. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. Please take your time as you settle in, making your body comfortable. So we relax into the felt sensation of our body seated here. Just letting the weight drop down. Feel the weight of the pelvis with its contact on the cushion or the chair, feeling the support. And our spine organizes upward out of the pelvis. Just respecting the natural curves of the spine, the sense of purpose in the spine. Just a subtle openness in the area of the chest, of the heart. Openness of the throat. A softening of the features of the face, the eyes, the ears, inner ears, jaw. And checking in with the body. How is the body this morning? We use the body as a way to settle the mind, as a way to arrive in our present moment experience. As the mind settles, we can tune into more details of our felt experience. Any sense of motion in the body, the movement of breath, any sense of subtle vibration. Places that are warm. Places that are cool. You can let the sensations of the body fill the mind. Our words, our commentary, it's not needed. Find the direct contact and fullness of the body. And let's check in on the mind, heart as well. How is the mind this morning? Like a little temperature, put in the temperature gauge. Is there dullness or restlessness? Is there a sense of settledness? Maybe some preoccupying thought, and just notice. And always we attend with an attitude of care and wisdom. Whatever arises, it's okay. That's a bottom line. And as we notice what's happening in our hearts, in our mind, we can feel how that reverberates through the body. And irritation and anxiety. Instead of chasing that with a thought, we feel it in the body. Maybe the mind is all over the place this morning. So if we notice that, we may choose a very specific anchor in the body. For instance, the delicate sensation at the tip of the nose, or the rise and fall of the abdomen with each breath. Like we tie the mind to the in-breath, to the out-breath, and the space at the base of the out-breath. All are important. We use the breath to help us to arrive. So please take a minute to adjust, be comfortable in your seated position. I'll introduce myself. I know a lot of people came in. So my name is Wynn Fricke, and Mark Nunberg, who is the guiding teacher here, along with Shelley Graff. Mark is my partner, and we began Common Ground out of our house back in 1993. So many years. It started as just a little seed and a few people gathering, and seeing Patrice was on our original board, but just appreciating the power of the Dhamma, what it creates, and the power of the community. So I'm so pleased to be here with all of you. So I want to talk about power this morning. Specifically, what the Buddha called the 4 paths to power. And I think this has come kind of interest to me as a topic, having felt in these last years, like really interested in power and what's the lens of power when we look at this Buddhist path. And this comes from an experience of suffering, like that experience that maybe we've all had at times where we feel disempowered, we feel powerless, we feel helpless. And the Buddha described the kind of mind it's like a gourd, one of those inedible vegetables that look like a acorn squash or whatever, floating down the river. And it's like there's no agency to that acorn squash, to that gourd, right? It just gets pushed with the slightest motion of the river will just push the gourd along. So I have felt that kind of mind where I just feel subject to the internal forces of my mind, to the external forces of my condition, and have just sort of lost my mooring, lost my anchoring. So, and there's this feeling, okay, where is power here? What did the Buddha have to say about power? And so it turns out he had a lot to say about power. And this particular list, the 4 iddhipadas, it's the Pali word, the 4 paths to power, is a list that's not talked about much. Right? We hear a lot about the 4 noble truths, the 7 factors of awakening, the 5 spiritual faculties, but we don't hear too much about the 4 pathways to power. But I found it really inspiring and really core to these teachings. So I wanted to offer what I could today, just in my exploration. So I think it's worth going into the brief etymology of iddhipada. So pada literally means foot or feet. And iddhi is associated with siddhi. It's a Sanskrit word that points to extraordinary potency in the mind. I feel like I'm soft. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good.
It's a little loud.
A little bit louder. Yeah, is there anyone in the room that knows how to turn that up a little bit? I'll try to also speak louder, but okay. So yeah, footpaths, these subtle onward leading footpaths. So this is a kind of power that is not egoic power, which is a fragile power, right? It's a onward leading power. We call it a spiritual power. So iddhipada more generally means the skillful mastery of an activity, iddhipada. And these qualities of mind, they point to 4 qualities, mental qualities can be developed in our formal practice, or they can be part of our daily life. So in a general sense, this is a form of chitta bhavana, cultivation of the mind. There's a scholar, Glenn Wallace, who explains the cultural context of the Buddhist term of bhavana, which has this sense of cultivation around it, or to bring into being. And so he writes that a farmer performs bhavana when she prepares soil and plants a seed. I imagine that when Gautama, the Buddha, chose this word to talk about meditation, he had in mind the ubiquitous farms and fields of his native India. Unlike our words meditation or contemplation, Gautama's term is musty, rich, and verdant. It smells of the earth. I just like that embodied sense when we talk about cultivation of the mind, the fullness, the warmth, the earthiness. So because iddipadas are associated with supernormal powers, I'm not going to talk at length about it, but I will read just a little bit of a sutta just to give you a scholarly framework. This is not going to be my focus today, and I have no comment of I have no experience in these things, so nothing to comment, but it talks about the development of psychic abilities, which is like a deepening sensitivity of mind, right? A sensitivity that can start to feel and read what's happening around. So she knows the awareness of other beings, other individuals, having encompassed it with her own awareness. She discerns a mind with passion as a mind with passion, and a mind without passion as a mind without passion. She discerns a mind with aversion as a mind with aversion, a mind without aversion as a mind without aversion. She discerns a mind with delusion, a scattered mind, a restricted mind, an excelled mind, a concentrated mind, a released mind. So these are just small excerpts. And further, when a practitioner has thus developed and pursued the 4 bases of power, he experiences manifold supernormal powers. Having been one, he becomes many. Having been many, he becomes one. He appears, he vanishes. He goes unimpeded through walls and ramparts, mountains, as if through space. He dives in and out of the earth as if in water. He walks on water without sinking, as if it were dry land. So this is from the Iddhipata Vibhanga Sutta, which is much longer. But I wanted to focus on the particular power of the Iddhipadas to dissolve what are described as the outflows or the asavas. And I just want to talk about this briefly, just because it's just another really visceral and important lens into the path. So the asavas in a broad way are what weaken the heart. The asavas are the ways in which the heart leaks energy, right? So our iddhipadas, the ways to building strength and power in the mind heart. The asavas are the ways that the heart is weakened. So I'll just talk really briefly about the asavas, and then we'll talk primarily about the iddhipadas. So there are 3 forms of asavas, three ways in which the heart, say, loses its bearings, heart leaks. And this is one which we've been hearing about forever, is entanglement with sense pleasure, right? So there can be sense pleasure. We can enjoy sense pleasure, but it's the reliance and the craving around sense pleasure where it becomes an issue. So sense pleasure is not a problem until the heart craves. That's when it becomes a problem. So I notice, for instance, when I get up in the morning, I am single-minded getting over to my press to make coffee, right? Just single-minded, forget the moment. This moment is to be gotten through until I have my coffee, right? So we can call that an asawa, right? The mind is not here. The mind is just looking for this moment in the future, after I've had my coffee, after I'm composed. So this is visceral, the way the heart has that feeling, this kind of leaking, grasping, dependent on sense pleasure. Could give a whole talk about just even that, but the interest of getting to the four powers, let's go on. And so the second, more subtle entanglement is the craving to become. So this is talked about in different ways, but we can consider this restless activity of mind, striving to become something stable, to become someone stable. We want to feel solid. We want to feel real. We want to not feel vulnerable. We want to not feel frightened. And so this effort of the mind, this proliferation, right? The mind proliferates to control what is inherently unstable, what is inherently not solid. So this effort to become solid, right? We all know this, right? We all know this feeling. Is this craving to become, this entanglement with becoming. I think it's an interesting question to ask ourselves the feeling we most want to avoid, like what scares us the most, and how the mind proliferates and tries to build and control away from that feeling, right? That's an interesting question. It's almost the way a personality is formed. And the third asawa is ignorance, which underlies the first two asawas, which is a fundamental misperception of how things are. We take what is impermanent to be permanent. We believe something unsustainable to be sustainable, to be satisfactory. We imagine ourselves and others to be fundamentally separate when we are fundamentally interconnected. And it takes work to maintain this misaligned view. It takes work to maintain that delusion. So this is an asawa. And this is all of us all the time, right? So this is all of us all the time. But we can see the energy. So this is the way the chitta leaks in these efforts, right? So in the mind of an arhat, someone who has released, dissolved the action of asawas, their mind is no longer subject to the push of pleasant and unpleasant. So this is really key in the Buddhist teaching, to pay attention to pleasant experience and unpleasant experience, and to pay attention to the push that comes with it, right? Like when I get up in the morning and my mind is foggy and it's really unpleasant, that's a push. That's an internal push to correct what's unpleasant, to get to the goal, which is something pleasant. I want to move from something that's unpleasant and get something that's unpleasant. So it's not really even the coffee I want. It's the feeling of pleasant that I want. Or at least not unpleasant. So in an arhat's mind, pleasant and unpleasant arise naturally, as they do in all beings and all animals. They are a part of our perception, but they don't come with a push. There is a different insight, a different understanding that can hold unpleasant and pleasant without being entangled, without being pushed. So there's the lovely example of the ring in the bull's nose. This is the Buddha's example. So a huge bull can be controlled by an 80-pound boy who has a string attached to the ring, right? He can make the bull go left, go right, because the bull does not want to experience that little pain in the nose when led by the child, right? And that's us, right? We know this. We don't want the tiniest displeasure. So we go here, right? Like this subtle maneuvering all the time to maximize comfort, maximize pleasure, minimize pain. And so in a certain way, the bull never understands its power, never understands its possibility. And I'll just say one more thing about, we all know these moments when we're not being pushed around by pleasure and pain. We all have those moments, and it's important that we bring attention, we bring full mindfulness to these moments. And we don't, because they feel so nothing, they can feel so neutral. Maybe they pose as boredom or just this vague space, which is vague enough that we search for something different. But if we can bring our attention there, mindfulness will infuse that moment. Mindfulness creates presence. It's not the other way around. It's not like mindfulness plugs into presence. Mindfulness creates presence, and there's power in that space. And that's a space we need to come to know in order to not be pushed around. And we only do that through investigation and attention. And that's why the Buddhists talk all the time. Steadiness in our mindfulness, sustained mindfulness, so that we don't miss these moments of, we'll call them neutral, but they're much more than neutral. They're moments of not being pushed. So to feed that part of the mind so we recognize it. So here are the 4 iddhipadas, 4 mental qualities that are an empowerment won by ardency, perseverance, and concentration. And I'll say them briefly and then talk about each one. So the first one is chanda, aspiration. The second is virya, which is energy. The third is chitta, mind consciousness. And the fourth is vimamsa, which is like investigation or inquiry. So I want to talk about chanda the most because I think it's confusing, this word, aspiration and the power of desire. So desire is complicated in the way that we talk about it in our Buddhist circles, but life doesn't happen without desire. Desire is essential. And if we can think of it like as a spectrum instead of desire or no desire, but think of the spectrum of desire. So we know the desire associated with craving and addiction, like tanha, that's translated as craving. And we know the suffering of that kind of desire. I don't need to go into length about that. That is very close to all of our hearts, to feel driven through addiction. That's deeply painful. That is a prison. And at the other end, just the beautiful qualities of heart, you know, the quality of generosity, the desire to be free of fear, the desire to be liberated, the desire to care for our families. This is all desire, right? So to sort of, desire isn't one thing. And we need desire to move through life. We need desire to grow. And we can call that, instead of tanha, craving, we can call that chanda, aspiration, intention, motivation. Chanda is endowed with active volitional striving. We all talk about striving as a problem, right? But it's not striving when the heart is wrapped into it, right? It's something we love, something we recognize of value. This aspiration, I see the value here. I'm connected to the value here. I care about it, and I can wrap my whole heart around it. So this is Chanda. Our capacity to hold a vision based on a recognition of value. So finding this deep wellspring of energy associated with motivation. And our aspiration can become craving when we become fixed and dependent on the outcomes of what we aspire to. That's an important point, right? Our aspiration, intention can transmute into a form of craving if we are too reliant on the outcome. And so this is wisdom, which allows us to focus our whole heart into a broken world, right? That makes me want to cry. This is our choice. Ananya Chatterjee is a local dance artist. She has a performance at O'Shaughnessy this weekend. She came to visit my class at McAllister to talk about her work. And she just told a little parable that moved me. She described a nest of baby birds and a mother in the nest, and surrounded by a forest fire that was just caving in. There was no hope, right? But there was a small puddle of water at the base of the tree. And so the mother would go down and bring a drop of water and just keep giving the little birds a drop of water, even though the situation was doomed. But as Ananya described it, well, I'll go down fighting, but also to recognize the energetic stamp of each intention, of each action. And that goes, the body, the life, death of the body is not the final story, right? The energetic stamp of the mind that is taking care. So this is karma. This is subtle, and this is important to see. This is from Gil Fronsdal. In regards to desire, craving versus aspiration, he says, when surface concerns and chatter quiet down, among the beautiful things we can find are our aspirations. The etymology of aspiration, like spiritual, is rooted in the Latin word for breath, spirare. This points to the close relationship between breath and aspiration. Craving tends to contract the breathing. Aspiration surfaces most easily when our breathing is relaxed and open. In the same way that natural breathing can't be an act of will, so too the motivations and sense of purpose that come with aspiration can't be willfully generated. Staying aware of our breathing can keep us close to what inspires us. Noticing the physical and mental tension, pressure, and uneasiness that come with craving make it easier to distinguish it from aspiration. Just want to, maybe it's instructive for me to talk about a little bit of my own experience, but I'm remembering the time when Mark, my partner, he was going to go to Burma for the Rains Retreat, 3 months. And I was working for a dance company in town. And I really did not want to be left. I really wanted to go to Burma for the Rains Retreat with him. And yeah, I ended up actually going. I left the dance company so I could go to Burma and have that experience. And I could see, even at the time, like, what was superficial in the mind. Like, I could see there was this part, oh, I'll be in the club of people who have gone to Burma, or just I could see there were just parts of the mind that were not great, and like I wasn't proud of kind of parts of the mind that I was seeing. But I also wanted to deepen my insight. I wanted to be with my partner. So it was mixed, right? We're all half-baked all the time, right? We're all half-baked. So I went to Burma. And even while I was in Burma, I could see the same superficiality. I had a really hard time with the teacher, really hard time with the interviews. We had to interview every day. We had to talk about our practice. And he just struck me as a mean old guy. And, and it was like, my mind became fully wrapped around just how do I get through the interview? How do I practice, find something to say so I can get through this interview? Like that was the extent of it. And I saw, Wynn, you're not looking for liberation. You're just like, you just don't want to deal with the pain of this particular thing. So I could see that too. But at the same time, I really practiced hard. Like in the whole of it, I'm so grateful I made that decision to go to Burma and kind of what it taught me. And I'm reminded of a quote, Akichino, Mark Weber. He's a former monk who is now a psychologist, and he speaks eloquently about the Iddhipadas. I recommend him. But he said something on a talk. He said, how we frame our problem and path is purified with our action, our motivation, our focus. It can be crude things that make us discover something. The initial desire doesn't say anything about the worth of what is found. Or maybe doesn't necessarily say anything about the worth of what is found. So I think we have to follow our heart, we have to follow our energy, right? Even if it's imperfect, even if we feel our motivations are imperfect. When I lived at the Integral Yoga Institute in New York, the Swami there, Swami Ashokananda, he used to say, make your mistakes as quickly as possible. And I think more than anything, I think this path is one of deepening refuge, of understanding what is our real refuge. I know we take the refuges, we speak the refuges, but really that they become our refuge is a path. And I think it's a path that has a lot of betrayal and insult and anger and disappointment that can be part of it in discovering what is and what is not our refuge. I like the idea of the things that haunt us, the superficial parts of our mind, the things that have traumatized us, that burden us, that they can be like crucibles for us. And I just like the word crucible. I had to look it up. A ceramic or metal container in which metals or other substances can be melted and subjected to very high temperatures. And the second meaning is a situation of severe trial in which different elements interact, leading to the creation of something new. So it's like those places of deep pain, they can be the crucible. Ajahn Chah said something great. Let me see if I can remember it. If it's not good, let it die. If it won't die, make it good. So the things that haunt us, make it good, right? Because we all want it to die, right? We all know, let this thing go, let it go, but it won't. So how does that thing become our crucible? So when we have a desire, when we hold it clear and strong, what we intend will shape every moment. It will shape what we pay attention to, what we say, how we act. So our intentions can exist both consciously and unconsciously, like a matrix, like a fabric, right? And wordlessly will inform our behaviors, will inform our thinking. The archetype of Chanda, so each of these four mental qualities has an archetype. The archetype or symbol is that of the lover. So a lover holds relationship. A lover is connected to value. So we can have aspirations, but if we don't love them, we need to love them. So the second quality is virya, the second mental quality, which is energy, just plain, straightforward application of energy, which allows us to achieve our goal. There's a steadfastness, a determination associated with this virya energy. So I think for each of us, we all need to make a study of where is our energy? Where do we find our energy? What makes the heart come alive? We need to trace our energy. Just want to read this. This is from Joseph Goldstein's book, Insight Meditation. And talks about Dipa Ma, his teacher. Many of you may have heard of her. Dipa Ma, one of my teachers from India, exemplified this quality of heroic effort. There were times in her practice when she was very ill, so weak that she had to crawl up the stairs to the meditation hall to continue her meditation. Nothing daunted her. The last time I saw her before she died, Dipa Ma turned to me and said, you should sit for 2 days. She did not mean a 2-day retreat. She meant one sitting, 2 days long. Just sit for 2 days. When she said this, I started to laugh because it seemed so beyond my capacity. She looked at me with deep compassion and said, "Don't be lazy." Dipa Ma had an astonishing capacity for effort, and it brought her the kind of result that the strength of mind brings. People with this power, this characteristic, who have the strong ability to make effort, are not disheartened by how long it takes, how difficult it is. It takes months, years, it doesn't matter, because the courage of the heart is there. The archetype for virya is the warrior, which is loyalty or devotion to a cause, to a vision. And with that comes the capacity to withstand difficult feeling. And the willingness to be bruised in our effort. This image of the sword, it suggests a precision to our dedication. Giving our energy here means not giving our energy there. Like when I decided I really wanted to dance, like as a career, as a way through life, and it meant giving up it meant not going to graduate school as I had intended to. It meant moving to New York and living in places I don't even want to describe to you, in order just to train, but there was a single-mindedness, there was this love, this chanda, like for whatever reason, not to judge, it was there for me, and I wanted to follow it. And it made so much possible for me, made so much objectively difficult stuff possibly, but I didn't care, because this thing was so important and it had that meaning for me. Yeah. So there's this association with sacrifice. We galvanize our intention into a decision, and we surrender, we commit our energy, even when it's hard. So chanda, virya, and then chitta is the third mental quality. In its general meaning, chitta refers to consciousness or the mind's essential knowing nature. In terms of the iddhipadas, it means the consciousness that is applied to the task at hand. So it means when we're chopping wood, the mind isn't daydreaming. It's unified around our intention. And this attentiveness allows a mastery. It's pure, undistracted, and subtle. A gathered consciousness that has ardency and dedication to a vision. And the archetype for chitta is the king or queen, which holds the cosmos, sees the big picture, takes care of administering all the pieces, fine-tunes all the components of the kingdom. So this is chitta. It makes me think of the Pali word yoniso manasikara, wise attention. How we pay attention. What do we choose to pay attention to? How do we direct our attention? Chitta. And the last of the qualities is vimamsa, which we can translate as intelligent investigation. And this is basically an inquiry into cause and effect. So is how I'm approaching what I set out to do, is it working? So it's pay attention. Is it working or is it not working? If it's not working, can I shift left? If it is working, yeah, keep going that way. Moment-to-moment sensitivity to the task at hand, intelligent oversight, investigation. I like the Buddhist term ehipassiko, come and see. We learn by paying attention. So even this whole Buddhist path, the underlying invitation is to come and see. Just pay attention, and that will tell you what's needed. And the archetype for Vimamsa is the magician or the sorcerer. So the one who understands how something functions, understands how it works, like the mechanic, can see how something's made, how something's unmade. This quality allows us to fix a problem, to make a correction. And so I want to point to, in the sutta that talks about these four mental qualities, each of them is accompanied by the word samadhi. So, as well as ardency. So each is associated with the allies, we can say, of ardency, like fullness of heart, and of samadhi, a gatheredness of mind. So like chanda samadhi, virya samadhi, chitta samadhi, vimamsa samadhi, the non-wavering of mind. So here it means that the mind has been brought to a place of stillness by means of our aspiration, our energy. And because of this stillness, there is tremendous power and focus. So I want to offer, I know the children will be coming in soon. I want to offer one more quote by Ajahn Chah that is really essential. He said, making the mind strong and making the body strong are not the same. To make the body strong, we have to exercise it, to push it in order to make it strong. But to make the mind strong means to make it peaceful, not to go thinking of this and that. we sit in meditation, staying with the one who knows. And I'll, as a way to conclude, I'll just speak to my own experience with, what I came up against in trying to become a performer was just the deep reserve and self-consciousness and fear in my personality. It was hard for me to even not be self-conscious in a dance class, just a real reserve, and being in front of audiences just proved to be horrible. It was like paralyzing, horrible. And it threw such a dagger in my dream, like to come up against my own limitations, my own fear. And the way I worked with my mind, the way I worked with my view, trying to think this, trying to think that, like, every book, every resource I could find. But what I found was that this force couldn't be solved by a view or by thought, right? Like that wasn't the source of it. It was bigger. That was an insight. It was bigger. Whatever caused this to be here, I don't know. It wasn't me. It's just here. And I started to take yoga classes. And at the end of the yoga class, you have this deep relaxation, the savasana on the back, where you just still the mind, you still the body. And I discovered that place of stillness where there was no more push, right? There was no more push. And that was like amazing to me. And it was a place I really trusted. I feel like, yeah, there is some power in this stillness of mind, and different than what I needed to do with my body as a dancer, right? That needed one approach. What I needed to do with mind was sit back. There's something that had to be receiving, listening, this willingness to stop what I was doing in some way, to back up, to listen, to open. And that was just like the pearl that I understood. I need to still. I need to find, and I created the conditions I needed. I moved into a yoga institute and started to meditate every morning. Just a whole thing that followed that little insight of what this mind needed to go forward. And I'll just yeah. I'll end with a little quote by Ajahn Sucitto. It's not a quote, it was just from a talk I was listening to not too long ago. He said, notice where there is no push, but only motion. Isn't that interesting? Notice this place. It's full and warm and restful. And I have found that to be true. Like it's expansive. And it's trustworthy and it's full of motion. And I think there can be this image that we have of this coolness, of something, I don't know, surgical in our practice, in the way we work with our mind. And it just I go back to the bhavana, to this earthy, musty fullness, embodiment of power. And Ajahn Sucitto's words, notice the places where there's no push, but there's motion, and the fullness of that. Yeah, so we'll end there, and just in the small groups, I think it would be lovely to consider your relationship to desire. Like, are you afraid of desire? How has desire served you? How has it led you to hell? Those kind of questions, like this role of desire. And even considering, for us to accomplish any goal, these four things need to align, right? Whether it's a worldly goal or a spiritual goal, these qualities of mind need to manifest to move forward, so we can consider, our motivation, our energy, how we're conscious of what's happening, and how we inquire. Is it working? Is it not working? How these qualities come together. And we can just sit. The children come in. It's 11:45, and just let the words settle.